I want to just focus on some of the main issues that come up with food preparation. And to start, we'll talk with, I think, not the most sort of well-known issue, but the issue of tochein, which is one of the 39 malachot, which means you're not allowed to grind on Shabbos. For example, if you have wheat and you're grinding it into flour, that would be the malacha of tochein, which is not so common that people are grinding, but people do. But tochein extends not only to grinding, but to cutting things into very small pieces. And this is one of the most difficult phrases of the issue of tochein. What's the definition of small pieces? How small is small? And really there's no shear. You think it would be like, 1/100th of a tefach or something, but there's no measurement ever given for tochein. But really the best rule of thumb is if you call it a small piece, then it's tochein. If you call it really small pieces, then it's a problem. If you consider it not so small, it's not a problem. There's no real better definition to small pieces that I know of. But I wanted to just go over some of the details, which some of them are interesting and very practical. One is that there's no problem of cutting into small pieces something which doesn't grow from the ground. So, for example, eggs, there's no problem of cutting up eggs because eggs don't grow from the ground. Egg salad is not a problem because eggs don't grow from the ground, or an egg slicer would be allowed because it's an egg. Fish, meat, cheese could be mushed up, chopped up. Now, the things that make let's see, avocado, making guacamole. Obviously, avocados grow from the ground. So avocados, or this is mashed potatoes, or mushed up bananas, which is a little bit less appetizing, but maybe for young kids, should be a problem of tochein because they grow from the ground and you're cutting it into very small pieces. There are some people who think that there's no problem that you're allowed to make guacamole because it's a little bit different than grinding. How is it different than grinding? I muted you all, so you can't answer. But you're not really making small pieces like grinding. You're just mushing it. So some say it's not a problem. Some say it is a problem, and therefore we try to avoid it. If you want to do it, the suggestion is to do a shinoi. And apparently a shinoi is more effective when it comes to this malacha than in general. Because usually a shinoi, if you do something in an abnormal way, it would change it from being a prohibition d'oraita to being d'Rabbanan. If you do a shinoi, it's not in the actual parameter of the malacha d'oraisa, just d'Rabbanan. So usually that doesn't help you that much because you're not allowed to violate either one. But in this case, first of all, some people allow it even in the normal way. And secondly, if you do a shinoi, like using the handle of a knife, then it's considered to be a very big shinoi. Why is it a big shinoi? Because you're basically doing it in a way that can't do the malacha. Like you can't cut with the back of a knife, with the handle of a knife. So by definition, you're not even doing the malacha. So you're allowed to make it with the back of your knife. Other things that are important to do to make it permissible are always when you do it right before you eat. When you do it right before you eat, it's more like preparation for food, and that would make it better, more permissible. And like also for a child, if you're mashing it up right before you feed the child, that makes it better. Okay, a spiralizer was a question from the audience. Spiralizer, interestingly, is not supposed to be used on Shabbos. And it's what I was thinking about the spiralizer, it's not really a small piece because it makes a very long spiral, but since it's very thin, it's considered to be part of the malacha of tochen. Okay. And again, one last halacha to think about with tochen is that things that were originally small pieces and that were made into a big piece, like bread, where it started off as small pieces and it was, baked together, you're actually allowed to crumble it up because then you're putting it back into its original state. Okay, that's all I've got about this malacha. Feel free to interrupt me. Now let's talk about what I think is the most commonly confronted issue, which is heating and reheating. So I'm going to try to give a little overview of the main issues and then some practical application. Obviously, you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. That's one of the 39 malachos. And there are quite a few rabbinic precautions that the Chachamim said don't do these things because either it looks like cooking or it can lead to cooking. So there are a lot of rabbinic precautions to watch out for when it comes to keeping food hot and reheating food, which is something obviously that we do a lot of on Shabbos because we're always eating on Shabbos, which is what you're supposed to do on Shabbos. So pretty much there's this word over here called shehiyah. Shehiyah is when you leave food on a heating source from before Shabbos. Like you leave food on the fire, on the blech, on the hot plate. So it was cooked before Shabbos and you're leaving it to stay warm for your Friday night meal. So when it comes to shehiyah, this is like not such a, the Chachamim said you can't do it without doing something because they were afraid of the following problem, that you're going to leave the food on the fire and then you're going to get nervous that it's either, what's the fire, like let's say coals on the bottom of an oven, and then you have the food on top and you're worried, the guests are coming and I thought it'd be ready, but now the coals kind of like are going out and it's not so hot and I don't want the food to either be raw or to be cold. So you might stoke the coals to make sure the fire is stronger. So the Chachamim said you can't do shehiyah, you can't leave it on the fire unless you cover the heat source as a reminder that you won't go and stoke the coals. So that would be number 3, that you might adjust the heat. So the solution to shehiyah is covering the heat source. And then there's hachzara that I put together on the slide. Hachzara is when you take something off of a fire and you put it back onto that same fire. So that's like worse, and therefore there are more rules to make you able to do that. When it comes to hachzara, the problem is that it looks like cooking because you're taking a pot and you're putting it on a stove. And number 1, just wanted to mention another potential problem with putting something on a heat source is liquids. Liquids have this very difficult property that liquids, once they cool and you reheat it, it feels like you're cooking it again. Even though things usually can't be cooked twice, like if you cook chicken, you can't cook it again. It's just cooked. So if you take a cold cooked chicken and put it on the fire, you can't really violate the malacha of cooking. But when it comes to a liquid like water, if you boil water, you cook the water. If it cools and then you heat it again, you cooked it again. So that's another potential thing to watch out for when it comes to reheating things on Shabbos. So what are the solutions? So so when it comes to, I'm not going to go exactly in the order of the slide. When it comes to shahiyah, which is leaving things on the fire, the solution is number 3, cover the adjuster. I call the adjuster, you see, in the example of a stove with hot coals, the adjuster is the coals themselves, and the Chachamim were worried that you would stoke the coals to raise the heat. So what would you cover today to do that? Who has a suggestion? Karen.
You cover the knobs.
You cover the knob. That's really logical.
Yeah.
So,
or take off the knob.
Or take off the knob. So that's a really logical thing. Rav Aaron Kotler, the famous Rosh Yeshiva of the Lakewood Yeshiva and the founder of Lakewood Yeshiva, said that. But most people don't follow that view, even though it's most logical to me. Most people follow Rav Moshe Feinstein, who said that no, just like the Chachamim said to cover the heating elements, which is the coals, we should also cover the heating elements. So you wouldn't cover the knob, you'd cover the heat. So if it's a stove, you would put a blech over the fire and leave the knobs exposed. Even though really, Karen saying that doesn't make any sense. You're not going to stoke the fire on a stove, you're going to turn the knob. But Rav Moshe said that the original Gzeira was on the heat source, so we should also cover the heat source. Rav Aaron Kotler said to cover the knob, and there's no point in covering the heat source. So I think that most people follow the Rav Moshe Feinstein approach, although some people do both. So if you have a hot plate, let's say, I mean, I don't know, maybe the Leshars are like from the old generation and use an actual blech, but most people don't use an actual blech, yeah, old soul. But most people use these new, what do they call them, hot plates? So if you're using a hot plate, so maybe you would cover the knob. There's no heat source to cover, and that's that. When it comes to hachzara, which means taking something off the food, next. I'm going to jump ahead. When it comes to hachzara, which is taking something off the fire and putting it back on, kind of listed this a little bit ahead. Don't look. Okay. When it comes to putting something back on the fire, there, the Chachamim made 5 conditions that if you want to take something hot off the fire and put it back on, there's 5 conditions to make that permissible. This would come up, when do you do that? Really, the only example I can think of is a cholent, where you want to take some cholent on Friday night, take the pot off, and then put it back on. If you want to do that, the act of putting it back on looks a lot like cooking. You're taking food, you're putting it on a machine that cooks food, and you're leaving it there. So it looks a lot like cooking. So there, the Chachamim said there's 5 conditions to make that permissible. One is that when you put it back on, it has to still be hot. It can't cool off. Number two, it has to be in your hand the whole time. So that like the whole time you're sort of like just taking it off and putting it right back. Number three is that you had the intention to return it to the heat source when you took it off. Number four is that the food is all fully cooked. And number five is that the heat source is covered. So number five is the same as shahiyah, but we add these other four conditions to enable you to take food off of a fire and put it back on. Now, here's something that happens a lot. Putting on, it's called putting on for the first time, meaning it's not such a coherent way of saying it, but basically, if you want to take food out of the refrigerator and heat it up for Shabbos lunch, let's say, so you're not really taking it, you're not doing any of the previous two things. In other words, you're not leaving it from before Shabbos till now, and you're not returning it because it's coming out of the refrigerator. So this is a category which is a little bit more severe because it doesn't look like a continuation of the previous cooking because you just took it out of the fridge and putting it on the hot plate, on the heat source, and it looks a lot more like cooking. So here, what the Chachamim said is that it's not enough to just cover the heat source. Really, it's ideal that there should be no settings at all. Or like Karen said before, or you break the knob. In order to take it out of the refrigerator and to put it on the heat source in order to heat it up, there should really be no settings at all. So really the most ideal appliance for heating up food is really, this is my favorite appliance, the hot plate with no settings. I mean, I don't even know why, whatever. I don't know. Whenever I had one with a setting, I never really used the settings. So the hot plate with no settings, which is something which is never used for cooking. No one ever cooks on a hot plate. And it doesn't look like cooking. There's no possibility that you're going to stoke anything. So you could take food on and off on Shabbos and it will heat your food up. So that's what I think is the halachically the best appliance for heating food on Shabbos. Now, here we have this beautiful meal in the warming drawer. The warming drawer is a little bit more subject to debate. Some people think the warming drawer is okay, and some people don't really like it very much. I mean, if you leave the food there on Friday before Shabbos, then I think it's a pretty reasonable thing to do. Putting it in on Shabbos is a little bit more problematic because it's adjustable. So it's hard to get a non-adjustable warming drawer. There's going to be a knob, turn it on and off, and the temperature. And there's an additional problem with a warming drawer, which is that it's when you open it, I mean, look how small it is. And let's say it's set to like 160 degrees or something like that. And you open it, the temperature drops by like, by like 50 degrees in the first 10 seconds. So when you open it, you're almost automatically triggering the thermostat to turn the heating element back on. And it seems like it will happen very relatively immediately and directly because of what you did. So therefore, some poskim think that you really shouldn't use a warming drawer because you can't open it on Shabbos. The only time that I think, if you want to use a warming drawer, the best way to use it would be only on Friday night. And if you take all the food out at one time, then you have this situation where if you're taking all the food out at the same time, so even if you're triggering the heating element to turn on, you really don't want it to go back on because you're not using it anymore. So you wish it wouldn't go back on. But what can you do? You can't turn it off. So it goes back on. So there it happens without your intent and sort of like to your detriment. So if you take all the food out at once on Friday night, I think it's okay. But it's more problematic if you're not taking it all out at once or if you're putting food into it on Shabbos. I want to just put a little shout out here to this great appliance also. It's called an oven. So this past Friday night, we had like a sort of small meal. So I didn't plug in the hot plate, and I just turned the oven up before Shabbos and put all the food in. And if you turn the oven off before Shabbos and you leave the food in, it is piping hot an hour or an hour and a half later when you're eating dinner. So it's also a really good way to keep your food hot on Friday night, and you don't have to have any appliances on for Shabbos. All right, let's see what I skipped here. Okay.
Question?
Yeah, please.
So what about that old-fashioned blech thing that you were talking about before?
Oh yeah, like with a burner under it.
Yeah.
So it's really out of style, but that's what everyone used to do. Just leave your stove on and cover it with a blech, which is fine. On Friday night, it's very easy to explain the halachos because you basically can leave your food anywhere on the blech and you're fine. And you can take it off. So if you put, let's say, like the soup right over the fire and then like your other food sort of next to it. So that's totally fine. That's exactly what the Chachamim said. That if you want to leave it on from before Shabbos, you just cover the heat source and you're fine. And the most classic, traditional way to do that is to cover the fire with a blech. That's totally fine. When it comes to reheating food on the blech on Shabbos, it's a little bit more complicated because if you read all the Shabbos Sfarim, there's like all the different zones on the blech. So you can't really put food directly onto the fire, but you can put it in the areas where it's less hot.
Right.
So,
I know, but it's hard to. What you're saying is it's hard to identify exactly where those spots are.
Yeah, and you don't really want to touch it to find out.
So you're saying I have to buy one of those warming trays? Is what you're saying?
Well, it depends what you're. I mean, if you want to have really hot food at lunch, you mean?
Not really hot food, but warm. I want to be able to take food out of the refrigerator and warm it up so that it's palatable for lunch.
Yeah. Another great thing to do is to put it on top of the crock pot if you have a crock pot on.
So I do that when we have cholent, but we don't have cholent all the time.
Well, you should.
What if I fill that cholent pot with water and we're not really going to have cholent, but it's faking it so that I could use it as a place to warm up my food?
Wow, you're smart. You're like trying to, outsmart them because there is a halacha that you're allowed to put food on top of another food, on top of another pot to warm because that's not the way that people normally cook. And that'll be a reminder that you're not really cooking it. And that's fine. Like I mentioned, you can put food on top of a crock pot. And I saw I was reviewing one of the Hilchos Shabbos books that bottom pot has to have food in it. Otherwise, it's not really a pot on top of a pot. It's, but you're saying, no, I'll put food in and maybe I'll just leave water in there.
Yeah, put food on top.
Put food in the crock pot, water.
Okay.
So you put water in, and then not really sure. Especially, I don't know if it matters if you're using the water or it's just as long as there's food in it.
Right.
But maybe you can use it after you make tea out of the water for dessert.
Mm.
I think that would be okay. When it comes to taking food out of the refrigerator and putting it on the hot plate, it doesn't matter. You don't have to wait for it to come to room temperature. You can take it out of the fridge and put it straight onto the plata. Now, I'm going to tell you something now that I think is not so practical, but just important to know, I guess, to just understand. Hatmana is another decree that the Chachamim made, which is that you can't leave something that's like sort of very insulated to stay hot on all sides. Because of this prohibition, there are some people who don't believe in the crock pot and think you're not allowed to use a crock pot because there's heat on all the sides. Here, the issue is that there's no heat, meaning they only want cholent to be like either on a stove or on a flat heat source. Here, the debate is that since there's no heat, there's no insulation on top and no heat from the top, so that's what most people think, that it's allowed because there's no insulation or heat coming from the top. But that does exist. Now let's talk about another important halacha, which is that if let's say you're not home, let's say you work out of your house or something like that, you're not home on Friday and you come home right before Shabbos. So there's basically two ways to make cholent. One is to make it early Friday morning before you leave your house. And the other is to put it up right before Shabbos. And even though you're usually supposed to make sure that it's fully cooked in order to leave it on Shabbos, there's this other extreme where it's not cooked at all. And then it's actually you're actually allowed to leave it on for Shabbos lunch. And here the logic is very interesting because the Chachamim were worried that you would raise the heat to make sure that it's ready for Friday night dinner. And even if you're thinking, oh, I'll have it for lunch, but maybe you'll want to have it for dinner also. So they made this decree that you shouldn't leave it on because you might make, raise the heat. But if you put it on raw right before Shabbos starts, then there's like no chance at all that it'll be ready for Friday night. And then you're allowed to leave it on, and then it will be, sort of safe for Shabbos lunch. So this is actually, some people do this. I think you should really try to do it as close to Shabbos as possible. Otherwise, if it's like an hour before Shabbos, it might be sort of like cooked already. But if you put it on everything raw right before Shabbos, then you are allowed to leave it on Shabbos. Now, I want to come back to this. I forgot to say something very important. If you want to do hachzara, which means to take the pot off and then put it back on, so number 5, the heat source has to be covered. So what I'm saying is this, is that if you leave your crock pot, if you're not going to take the cholent off on Friday night and you're just going to leave it on and have it for lunch, so then, it's good to cover the knob with a little piece of tin foil. But if you're going to take it off and put it back on, which is a much more severe thing to do, you should really take out a lot of tin foil, put tin foil in between the pot and the heating source. So you're fulfilling Rav Moshe Feinstein's definition of covering the heat, and and then let them stick out to cover the knob. So you're fulfilling around a cutler also. And then you could take it out and back in. If you're just going to leave it on Friday night and not going to take it off during Shabbos until lunch, so then you don't have to be so worried by the tin foil. I would just put a little piece of tin foil over the knob. That's all, folks. Try to just capture the main halachos of the food preparation, and then hopefully we'll have one more share next week on not sure what yet. Still taking requests, but either a little bit more about food or something else.